We also have the notion of the neighborhood of a solution. Closely related solutions will be clustered around as neighbors. Start from one, explore the neighbors for better solution, and then keep moving along the neighbors to reach better and better solution.
You go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see how in a muted thing we'll get some like to. So thanks so very much.
Thank you.
All of you do that. This is some small memento
Okay.
from
Sure.
Infosys side.
Thank you. Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
We have already seen the description of it. We are going to go for the generalization of it, where when you are stuck at a local minima, how a new strategy which is borrowed from low temperature physics and a technique that is called the metropolis strategy that is used in that context can be seen as a computational analog, and we will have a wonderful algorithm called simulated annealing. The process is called annealing, and we are going to have in the world of computer science a perfect analog of it, and that is why it is called the simulated annealing. So, just to the basic, here is the overview. There is an imperfect solid which has got a lot of impurities in it, and the way in which you want to rearrange the particles so that impurities can be separated is as follows. You first melt it and then take it to a high temperature. When you take it to high temperature, the whole thing melts, and therefore a rearrangement is possible of the particles is possible. Then you have a cooling schedule in which the separation is done. At the same time, the solid is also restored. The original crystal structure or a pure crystal structure is restored. So, from the state of the heat, the fully melted state, to the crystal state, when you recover, you separate the impurities, and this is the process of annealing. Okay? So, the methodology of using that can be described mathematically as follows. This is called the metropolis algorithm, and this can be viewed as some kind of a randomized local search, and here is the interpretation. Just watch how these things are happening, and then we are going to see our computer in the analog of this in the world of algorithms. Okay? So, let S be the initial state of the solid with the energy Es, and T be the initial temperature of the heat bath. Okay? So, you have heated sufficiently. It should be sufficiently high so that you could trigger this process. Generate a Q, state Q from S by applying a perturbation mechanism which transfers S into Q by a small random distortion. For instance, by random displacement of a small particle. And this random displacement of this small particle is feasible because it is in the high temperature state where all the particles are in the highly disturbed mode, very highly vibrant. So, it is possible for you to enable this kind of a disturbance. So, basically what you are doing is that you cause a perturbation and you take it to a different state. And if the energy state of the energy level of the new state is improved to the energy level of the old one, then you are setting S equal to Q. So, if EQ is less than or equal to ES, then S equal to Q. If this is not the case, even though it is higher, I would like to explore and go to that state and then try to do some perturbation and so on with some probability. In other words, I am going to make the changeover to the state with certain probability. The probability is given by here. Actually, what you are doing is that you are checking at the energy difference. these are all called Boltzmann constant, and don't worry about it. There is an exponential degradation that you give here. So it remains in the same state with the probability 1 minus P of this, and it changes the state with a low probability. With a very low probability, it is changing the state. You can see in the local search that we have seen, if you find a better solution, you move. If you don't find any better solution in the neighborhood, you are stuck there. But here we are doing something slightly different. Even if the new solution is not better, we just go up the hill, okay, with some probability. In fact, if you simply do it arbitrarily, you may do a mindless wandering in the solution space. Therefore, you are associating the probability of climbing up, and you are going to the new state with some controlled probability. And after that, you are going to decrease T appropriately. This is according to some cooling schedule. If T is not too close to 0, you are going to repeat this step, else you are going to output the current state. So you claim to have reached the satisfactory state if no perturbation mechanism is possible and the crystal structure has completely arrived at and everything is in good order. If this is not the case, you are going to reach to a new state and so on. So the way in which you are going to do is, here in this picture, even if my new state or the new solution is a bad one, I will go there and try to explore further from that one. In other words, there is a possibility to climb the hill and then get into the next valley, and that kind of a possibility is factored into and integrated in this process. Basically, this was not viewed with this kind of valleys and peaks. This is a kind of a physical reality, and what people in computer science have done is they have modified it and then built up an analog. Here is the very insightful analogy that takes you, these are all the details. So the set of, this is the important mechanism to understand, the relation between the physical experiment conducted and to the program that we write or the algorithm that we write. The set of system states is the analog of that in our world is the set of feasible solution. In other words, we take the solution space, you start from somewhere which is equivalent to starting from some state. The energy of a state is nothing but the cost of the solution. So if the cost of the solution is lower, you are switching over to the new solution. That is what you did in the local search. However, what we are doing here is, even if the cost is higher, I may go to that, but with certain probability associated with it. Therefore, this is nothing but the local search with a random twist given to the process. So energy of a state is analogous to the cost of a feasible solution. The perturbation mechanism is nothing but a random choice for the neighborhood. Okay? The perturbation there is, you go to the neighboring state, and here what you do is that you make a random neighbor and then look into its cost, etc. So how do you choose the next state? You are choosing randomly from its neighbor. The optimal state there is equal to the optimal feasible solution. The energy level being lowest with no impurities is equivalent to the optimal feasible solution with no redundancy, overhead, etc. Okay? The temperature cooling schedule that we have is what is a control parameter that we will have in our simulated annealing algorithm, and the controlling parameter is going to control the number of iterations that you are going to make to explore the entire solution space. In fact, the idea is not to explore the entire solution space. The entire solution space is too huge, but starting from somewhere with as few an iteration as possible, you should be able to discover the best possible solution. So here is a trade-off. Of course, if you keep on looking for better and better state, eventually you might get probably the best, but then you end up, okay, doing a lot of exploration exhaustively, and that may be infeasible. At the same time, if you do only very limited search, probably you are not even citing the optimal solution or nowhere even the near optimal solution. Hence, the cooling schedule is to be done in such a way that we get the trade-off addressed properly. Okay? So, now you can see the analog of whatever we have designed as annealing algorithm. Here is the annealing algorithm, and that is it. The description is complete with this. So input is an instance belonging to Li. Li means a list of feasible solution for the given input. So for a given input there will be lot of feasible solution. Among all the feasible solution you want an optimal solution. So you start from one feasible solution. Its cost may not be optimal, but you start from there and begin your exploration. Take an input instance and then for that input compute or select randomly an initial feasible solution alpha, okay, and select an initial temperature which is denoted by a control parameter T, okay. Select a temperature reduction function f as a function of two parameters T and time, okay. So how this function is to be chosen is depending on the application, and then this function will be repeatedly applied to reduce the temperature. In fact, this models the cooling schedule that you have. Eventually the melted one should become a crystal, so there is a cooling schedule and that runs over time. Gradually the temperature is reduced, and that is perfectly modeled by a two variable function. It is a parameter of T and time, and once you set up these two things, which is problem dependent, and if you are not satisfied with the current number of iteration and current quality of the optimal solution, you can always fine tune, extend the number of iteration, refine the cooling schedule and try to get a better solution, okay. Of course, if you do exhaustively you will get the optimal one, but that is not feasible. But by making a small subset exploration, can we hit on the optimal solution is the issue, and that is possible, and if you follow this scheme. So while T is greater than 0 or T is not too close to 0, randomly select a neighbor. This is equivalent to the perturbation, okay. So you are taking alpha and you are taking random neighbor in this. If cost of beta is less than or equal to cost of alpha, then alpha equal to beta. That's it. You are now going back into the iteration immediately, okay. Else only you do all of them. So after, if you have got a cheaper one, go to the next iteration, okay. So how many such cheaper jumps you would like to have? That depends on your cooling schedule, your satisfactory of the solution, all of them. So I equal to I plus 1, T equal to f of t plus I is modeling the cooling schedule and the duration that you would like to permit, okay. So this part is easy to understand. Here is the crucial part. If cost of beta is greater than alpha, still I may go to beta, okay, in the following way. Generate a random number R uniformly in the range 0 to 1, okay. So you are going to have the possibility like this, whether to go to the new state or not. E is less than cost of beta minus, there is a difference between this, you divide by T, and T is going to be reduced over a period of time, as you can see here. And if R is less than this quantity, then you are going to jump to it. If it is not the case, then you are not going to jump into it. In other words, you are deciding with the probability, this is a fraction, with probability this much, you are jumping over is indicated by this experiment, because you are selecting a number R in the range 0 to 1, and the probability that it will be less than this is same as, because the total space is of length 1 and this is a real number, so the proportion is precisely this value. In other words, with probability given by this quantity, you are jumping into it. That is all is stated over here, okay. So the same cooling schedule that we have is modeled in this way. Generate a real random number, and if it is less than this, then you are switching over. Else you are continuing with the same one and hope for another random neighbor to probably lead to a better solution. So this you repeatedly do, and when you do this repeatedly, you hope to get the globally optimal solution. Okay? So there are obviously several caveats here. Number one is the function, and two, only by extensive experimenting you have to fine tune and then get a description of the function, the cooling schedule, etc. All of them is instance dependent, problem dependent, and you can arrive only by extensive simulation studies and empirical analysis. That is the reason why you see for a given algorithm, like traveling salesperson algorithm, at least 6 to 7 different cooling schedules are available in the literature, and each one of them they will give the performance characteristic. It is up to you to adapt the right one for your context. Okay? Which kind of a cooling schedule would be appropriate depends completely on your requirement. This is only a generic strategy which is giving you a way to hit on the globally optimal solution. This is not guaranteed to hit on the globally optimal solution. Even this may get stuck with the locally optimal solution. However, the extensive experimenting shows that this one leads to very good result on a number of problems. Okay? So this is what I would like to add to the session or the search. So we have now, to summarize, a spectrum of methods available. Pruning as an independent strategy to solve the problem. Pruning as a catalyst for backtracking algorithm. The backtracking can be done in a blind manner with a fixed agenda of a fixed locus of exploration of the tree, and as and when you are at a node, you can check whether it is worth pruning or worth proceeding. That is a fixed method. The branch and bound, on the other hand, makes intelligent guesses, and then only if it is promising it proceeds further, otherwise it prunes it away, and this kind of a game is played, and the way in which you build the tree is going at various places in the tree. It is not a fixed one way of building up the tree. And branch and bound, pruning, backtrack, all of them are targeted for exact solution. Right? If you are not keen on exact solution, if you are satisfied with reasonably good solution, there are two approaches available. One is approximate algorithm, another one is heuristics. A heuristic, you don't have the quality of the solution, but in general it gives good one. By extensive experimenting, you are convinced that it works. This is a heuristics because there is no comment on the final answer that you get, whether it is the perfectly optimal solution you are landing up with, or what kind, how close is the solution output this to the optimal solution. Right? This outputs a solution. What is the relation between the cost of this solution and cost of the optimal solution? Nothing is known. There is no fixed proportion or relation or something like that. There is no comment, something like the annealing algorithm gives you a cost, gives you a solution with cost to overhead less than or equal to 50% or something like that. You do not have such results. That is the reason why it is still called heuristics. It gives you something reasonably close to the optimal solution. Sometimes it may give the optimal solution, and sometimes, in fact most of the times, it may not give the optimal solution. But even if it is not giving an optimal solution, it is giving satisfactorily decent solution. How satisfactory it is? Not known. That is the reason why it qualifies only as heuristics and not as approximate algorithms. Okay. So with this remarks, I wind up the discussion related to the spectrum of exhaustive search and the pruning strategies. I will go to the next important and classic method for problem solving, namely divide and conquer. Although divide and conquer is one of the fundamental techniques, there are a lot of subtle and important things that one has to observe, which is not taught in any of the college curriculum. Okay, because these are all from the practical point of view, and that is what I am going to address and discuss in this session now. Okay, we can switch on the lights and remove this one, and I'm going for the board.
Actually looking for whatever is the best solution possible. And I think what you're saying is, in a sense, a trade-off on the time available to you. Because
Yes,
you actually talked of some cooling schedule.
yes,
You are actually saying that I want to see if I got the perfect crystal, if not because of this kind of a
constraint,
ingredient that
Yeah.
time constraint.
right,
I'll basically see that majority of the impurities are collected on one side of the crystal.
yes,
I chop it off and take what is there.
Right.
And go with my solution.
that's right,
In a context such as ours, in an application services space, the most important trade-off is the time.
yes,
Because I have a shorter delivery time to a project, like
Yes.
a 3-month project.
Hmm.
Can't go on really looking at a perfect solution.
that's right,
How to get going.
right, right,
So,
right.
I thought it was important to relate this particular.
Definitely, and that is the reason why the compromise here is on the quality of the solution and the time that is available. If you look at the cooling schedule, I equal to I plus 1 is just indicative of how many times you are iterating, how much time it is available for you, and you are going to terminate with it. You are not repeating it until you get the optimal solution. If you look at the specification, I am leaving a copy of this draft with you. It's available for you. You can scan through leisurely, and then I am not saying that repeat until you get the optimal solution. I am telling you repeat until the temperature becomes close to 0 or enough number of times you have iterated. Okay? So you do certain things for a while, and whatever you get out of it, you take it as your solution and hope that that is reasonably good solution to the optimal solution. Okay?
Is this work from Kapitza's work on low temperature?
Which one?
Kapitza and Lando.
Huh.
They are the two guys who did this work.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
From there?
Yes, it is.
Because it's now 35 years is in the
No, it's the same thing. And the Metropolis algorithm is a name for the schedule and the experiment name, but it is same people. Yes.
I hope you enjoy the whole thing, okay? I think all these things.
So what is a divide and conquer algorithm? Most of you know, therefore I am not going to give the lot of esoteric details about it, but I want to get to the parts which are very important for you from the implementation point of view. Okay? So for those who are not familiar with divide and conquer, okay, I have even written in my write-up a historic event. Divide and conquer is a very popular strategy in war. What Napoleon has done on a particular day, including the date, it's a recorded event. Okay? So when the opponent's force has really outnumbered their one, he simply got into the middle of it and then separated them and conquered each part individually with the limited force that he has, and from that day onwards, this is popularly known as divide and conquer strategy. Okay? And of course, it is well known in Chanakya's wordings and wisdom, and it is also known in the Chinese war manuals. Okay? So this is a well known technique, but using this as a problem solving technique in our context makes many interesting twists to the problem solving. So divide and conquer works as follows. Typically, when a problem P is given, it is split into smaller problems. Just for the sake of illustration, I will take it as splitting into two problems, two smaller subproblems P1 and P2. The important point is they resemble the original problem. If they do not resemble the original problem, it is called decomposition. A problem consists of several subproblems, solve them individually. Okay? But if they resemble the original problem, you recursively solve them, and then based on the solutions of these subproblems, you synthesize the solution of the original problem. So the solution to the original problem is obtained by putting these sub-solutions together. The important point to be observed is these problems are disjoint. Because these problems are disjoint, we are able to individually work on it, assemble their solutions together, and then get to a final solution of it. Okay? So this will have three discernible phases. This is called the divide phase, this is called the conquer phase, and this is called the marry or merge phase. So if you look at a divide and conquer algorithm, these stages will be visible to you. Of course, one or two stages may not exist, but still you can see that it is all there. If you take the merge sort, which all of you know, there you don't do anything for dividing. You just use the array index middle value and then work on the first half, work on the second half, and then you put them together and merge it. So conquering is there, merging is there. In quicksort, in order to divide the given array into two parts, all smaller element on one side, all larger element on the other side, you do lot of work. However, after conquering, there is no merging needed because the elements are finding its the final place in the sorted sequence. Hence, there is absolutely no need to merge the solution. But there are problems in which you may have to divide, for which you have to do some work, you have to conquer, for which you have to do some work, and you have to merge, some more work, and all of them together will constitute the complexity of the algorithm. Okay? So this is how the typical divide and conquer algorithm works. Divide and conquer is basically recursive in nature. Okay? Now let us look into certain subtleties and nuances of handling the divide and conquer with an example. Consider the following problem. This is a well-known problem, finding the maximum and minimum. Find max and minimum of an array of n numbers, an. What is a naive algorithm? You have an incremental algorithm. Make one pass, find maximum, make another pass, find minimum. So the two pass algorithm takes 2n minus 2 comparisons. I am going to simply apply the divide and conquer algorithm and then see what happens. Okay? In my divide and conquer algorithm, I do the following. Split the array into two parts. Alright? If it is 40, I can split as 20 and 20. But what if it is 41? So what I am going to do is, I am going to split as 20 and 21. Okay? So split the array into nearly equal part, solve the subpart, and finally put the solutions together. So how am I going to put the solutions together? Here is the, so find min max a1 to an by 2 and let the output be min 1 max 1. Find min max an by 2 plus 1 to an, call it min 2 and max 2. That is, minimum of the second half is min 2, minimum of the first half is min 1, maximum of the first half is max 1, maximum of the second half is max 2. So I have individually solved, okay, I have found out, I have split the first half, and so here I find min 1 max 1, here I have min 2 max 2. How do I find the min and max, overall min and max? If I want to find it, these two minimums, if you compare, that is enough. Okay? And so to find minimum, you take the minimum of min 1 and min 2. So this you can do in one comparison. If you want to find the maximum, you find the maximum of max 1 and max 2, and therefore this takes another one comparison. So in two comparisons you solve this problem. So how many comparisons are involved in this? Well, the number of comparisons are not even visible. In the two pass algorithm, it is easy. A1 you take, compare with A2, compare with A3, Every comparison you could see and you could count explicitly. Because you could count explicitly, you can say it as 2n minus 2. But in this, how many comparisons are there? It is not visible. Every recursive program is analyzed by setting up appropriate recurrence relation, because every recursive code will lead to a recurrence equation for the complexity. It is done like this. Let Tn denote the number of comparisons done by the algorithm on an array of size n. If this is the case, then I have T of n equal to T of lower integral part of n by 2 plus T of upper integral part of n by 2 plus 2. This is for solving the first half. This is for solving the second half. Why do I write lower integral and upper integral? If it is 40, it is split as 20 and 20. That is n by 2 and n by 2. But if it is 41, then I am splitting as 20 and 21. If you divide 41 by 2, you get 20.5. 20 is lower integral part, 21 is the upper integral part. That is the reason why I have these two. And what is this cost? This 2 comparison is for this one. Okay, well, this is a recurrence equation, but even this is a code. When you recurse like this, where do you bottom out? Suppose there is only one element. Is there any comparison needed? Absolutely, there is no comparison needed. So what I do is, if n equal to 1, then return min equal to a1, max equal to a1. No comparison is needed. Else you are going to split into 2 parts and then you are going to do it. Therefore T of 1 equal to 0. Okay, T of n equal to T of n by 2 plus T of upper integral part of n by 2 plus 2 and T of 1 equal to 0. Okay. So this completely and perfectly gives you the complexity. But if it is like this, are we able to find or compare with this? Is it better than 2n minus 2 or worse than 2n minus 2? Or what about the status of this? We are not, yes? What? Somebody was saying something? Seems better. Seems better. Okay, let us see whether it is better. Okay, it looks like it is better, but let us see whether it is so. That I will know only if I solve the problem or find T of n in closed form. So T of n is in recursive form. Here T of n equal to 2n minus 2 means this is called closed form. Closed form means it is a formula where you put directly value of n to get the value of T of n. In recursive form, you cannot simply put it and obtain the value. You have to go through all that computation and then get it. Okay. So let us see, just test some values before finding even the closed form. Let us test some values and see what happens. T of 1 is 0. What about T of 2? T of 2 is lower integral, this is 0 plus 2, it is 2. What about 3? For 3, T of 1 plus T of 2 plus 2. T of 1 plus T of 2 plus 2. So 2 plus 2 is 4. And what about 4? For 4, it is T of 2 plus T of 2 plus 2. So 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6. And what about 5? For 5, it is T of 2 plus T of 3 plus 2. So 2 plus 4, 6 plus 2, 8. What about 2n minus 2? If you take 2n minus 2, put n equal to 1, 0, 2, it is 2, 3, 4, 4, it is 6, 5, 8. Hey, it is 2n minus 2 only. Right? We felt that it was better. We know that Napoleon has conquered a wonderful war with this technique, and we simply applied that here. And this looks lot more complicated. Solve first half, solve second half, put those solutions together and everything. After everything, you see again it is 2n minus 2, which was a very simple find maximum, find minimum is also 2n minus 2. Okay? Huh?
There will be a break-even point.
No, let us see. The problem is we can show that the exact value of this recurrence equation is T of n equal to 2n minus 2. This you can prove. It is not only verified by some values. Mathematically you can prove that if you solve this equation, it is going to be T of n equal to T of 2n minus 2 only. In fact, there is a very simple way to prove it. Okay, I can show the recursion tree and then I can convince you. I will come to that little later, but it is clear empirically and we can prove by induction. For example, T of n equal to 2n minus 2 means what about the lower integral part of n by 2? The lower integral part of n by 2 is n minus 1 and upper integral part of n by 2 is also n minus 1. So it is n minus 1 plus we have to split into the odd and even and so on. So don't worry. So what is happening is, it is possible for you to prove formally T of n equal to 2n minus 2. Therefore, this doesn't seem to give any advantage. Okay. First, let us make one simple observation. The observation is, if there are two elements, in order to compare the maximum and minimum, you don't need two comparison. Why? Suppose there are only two elements. You make one comparison. When you make only one comparison, in that the larger one you call it maximum, the smaller one you call it as minimum. So in one comparison itself you can find both maximum and minimum if you have two elements. Now what this says is, according to this is 0, this is 0, plus 2, therefore here I am finding it expensive. So if n equal to 1, return min a1 and a2, else if n equal to 2, then make one comparison and then output. So here assume that pseudo code is written, and if this is the program, then what is the complexity? The complexity is still T of n equal to T of n by 2 plus T of n by 2 plus 2. T of 1 is still 0, but T of 2 equal to 1. And this is applied only when n is greater than 2. So for n greater than 2, this is the formula. Now let us see what happens for this one. When you have this, let us go through. T of 1 equal to 0, T of 2 equal to 1. What about T of 3? T of 3 is T of 1 plus T of 2 plus 2, 0 plus 1 plus 2. There is some improvement here. And what about T of 4? T of 2 plus T of 2 plus 2, 1 plus 1 plus 2, which is 4. I seem to be gaining something. Okay. The another T of 5 is T of 2 plus T of 3 plus 2, so 1 plus 3, and this is 4 plus 2, 6. So you can see that some improvement is happening. Anyway, if it is 6, it will be 10 here. We know that in the old solution. So what is the difference between the previous recurrence equation and this recurrence equation? Previous recurrence equation had got only one boundary condition, this has two boundary condition, but this is a different one and this is definitely less. In every value I see that this is becoming better. For 6 it is 3 plus 3 plus, okay. So what is happening is, there is a reduction I could see, probably the reduction could be more, I don't know, or it should not be 2n minus 4, right? That will be little disappointing. Okay. Is there a substantial reduction? The answer is yes. But how much it is reducing to? If you make a thorough analysis of this, the mathematics of it is also easy. right, except that it is going to take slightly longer time. If you do that, you can show that T of n is less than or equal to 5n by 5n by 3 minus 2. You can show that T of n is less than or equal to 5n by 3 minus 2. That means there is a definite improvement here, right? What is the original cost? The original cost was 2n, and how much I have saved? 1 by 3n I have saved. What is the ratio of 2n to 1 by 3? 1/6 of it I have saved, which is roughly 16%. So in this method I have saved 16% of computation. What did I do? All I did was, I am not bottoming out at 2, I am bottoming out at 1, I am bottoming out at 2 also where possible, and immediately I see there is a gain here. Okay? I will come to mathematics of it later. Let us first get the insight. Okay? So there is a recursive call, and that recursive procedure keeps splitting the input. If you go down to the lowest level, what happens is so much of fragmentation takes place that the computational overhead becomes enormous. Besides, the building process may also introduce overhead. If you stop at a slightly higher level, in other words, if you could bottom out where possible, feasible and meaningful at a slightly higher level, right, the recursion tree becomes much smaller and the computation also significantly gained by that. Okay, where possible. And that is important. You must know if it is possible, then only that can be done. And where possible, if you could do it, you can significantly save. So, a lot of cables here. So, the first wisdom we are getting is the following. The first wisdom is, okay, recursion may bottom out at higher level. If the recursion bottoms out at higher level, you see the tree grows. The tree is having exponential growth. We have seen already, at one level it will have 2, at second level 4, at third level 8, and so on. Okay? So it is a doubling. Even if you say one level, at the bottom part, you see that there is a significant gain in the number of recursive function calls made. Not only calls, as this shows, even the operation count could be significantly reduced. Okay? So this is the first wisdom that we are getting. To see the second kind of a wisdom, we have to take a closer look at it. Let us do that now by looking at both the algorithm and discover the second most important insight. Okay? The most important insight is the following. First, let us look into the recursion trees themselves. Okay? Let us take 12. What are the recursive calls made in the first case? 12 will be split into 6 and 6. 6 will be split into 3 and 3. And 3 will be split into 2 and 1. And 2 will be split into 1 and 1. And this 3 will be split into 2 and 1. And this 2 will be split into 1 and 1. And again 3 and 3. And this is 2 and 1. And this is 2 and 1. This 2 is split into 1 and 1. And this 2 is split into 1 and 1. The recursion bottoms out at 1. So until you get the problem is fragmented into problems of size 1, the recursive calls are made. When the problem size is 1, the recursion bottoms out and you return the value. So what do? You return this value min 1 and max 1, you return this min value and max value, make two comparisons at this point and find the max and min, and you return this. Here you don't do any comparison, this is 0, no comparisons done. But this returns one max and min, this returns one max and min, and you make two comparisons here. Here you make no comparisons, but when these two comes, two comparisons are done here. Here you make no comparison, but two comparisons are done here to return a max and min. So this returns a max and min of 3 items, this returns a max and min of 3 items. With that you get the max and min of 6 item by making two comparisons. Okay. Again you are going to do the same thing, 0, 0, 2, 0, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0, 2, and then 2. And finally max and min of 6 items are available, max and min of other 6 items are available, put them together and get the max and min of 6 item by making two comparisons. So if you look at the recursion tree, this tells you the total number of operations done. Okay, how many operations are done? It is all 0 here, and 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, this is about 8, and then this is another 8, 16, and this is another 4, 20, and this is 2, 22. So 22 comparisons are done by this algorithm, and 2n minus 2, 2n minus 2 is 22, right? When n equal to 12, this is 22. Okay. Now it is a fact on the binary tree. Do you know this fact? The number of internal nodes is 1 less than the number of leaves. Do you know that? If you do not know it now. Okay. Number of internal nodes equal to number of leaves minus 1. This is true for any binary tree, complete or incomplete. Any binary tree, if you take, number of internal nodes equal to number of leaves minus 1, always. Okay. This property can be proved very simply by induction. There is no big deal is needed. Okay. How many leaves will be there? How many leaves will be there if I start with n? I am splitting everything up to 1, 1 and 1 and 1. So there will be n leaves. If there are n leaves, how many internal nodes will be there? N minus 1. At each internal node, I am spending two comparisons. Therefore, the total complexity is n minus 1 into 2. Therefore, 2n minus 2. And that is the reason why this algorithm had complexity 2n minus 2. Okay. The recursive algorithm had a complexity 2n minus 2 because you have split all the way up to 1 and then you have done like this. Okay. But suppose you are not going to split the 2's further into this, then the tree for 12 will look something like this. The tree for 12, the same tree for 12 is going to look like this, 6 and 6, and this will be split into 3 and 3, that is fine, but 3 will be split into 2 and 1, this is 2 and 1, and this is also 2 and 1, and this is 2 and 1. Okay. Now the recursion bottoms out here. But the only point is, over here I perform one comparison, but over here I perform 0 comparison. When there is only one item, no comparison is performed and min and max is returned. But when there are two items, one comparison is performed, min and max is returned. So after performing one comparison, I come here, and after performing 1 here and 0 and 1 and 0 and 1 and 0. When it is like this, okay, here how many leaves are there? the number of leaves here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because there are 8 leaves, okay, because there are 8 leaves, the number of internal nodes is going to be 7, but each internal node is going to take 2 comparisons anyway, because they combine 2 solutions. The number of comparison is 2. So 7 into 2, 14 plus 4, and this is only 18 comparison. So this one has taken 22 comparison, whereas this is taking only 18 comparisons. Okay. Why it is taking 18 comparison? The number of internal nodes here is 11. The number of internal nodes here is only 7. Okay. The number of leaves, okay, is much less here. Okay. The logic of why 5n by 2 minus 3, incidentally put n equal to 12 here in 5n by 3. Here you get 5n by 3 because 5 into 12, 60 by 3, 20 minus 2, 18 you get. For an arbitrary n, right, you can see that a number, if it is going to stop at 2 or 1, what is the maximum troubling case? Equal number of 1s and 2s. If there are more 1s, it is not possible. Can there be more 1s? It is not possible to have more 1s. If you have more 1s, what does it mean? You have split some 2 also into 1s. Otherwise, what happens is, when it comes to 3, you split into 2 and 1, and that's all. There you are stopping. So for every 1 that is coming into picture, there is a 2 that is already there. There may not be any 1 at all. For example, if you take 16, 16 will be split into 8 and 8. 8 will be split into 4 and 4. And 4 may be split into 2 and 2. And that's all. It returns immediately. So there may not be any 1 at all. But if there is a 1, there must be a 2 also. So the worst case is something like this, where for every 1 there is a 2. Right? For every 1 there is a 2 associated with it. In other words, if there are k 1s, there will be 2k, if there are k 1s, there will be k 2s, and notice that it is the total problem size. When n is fragmented, these are all the final level problems. So n is ultimately split finally. So if you add the leaf values, it will add to n, because n, the 12 is split into 6 and 6, 6 is split into this, and so on. So if you add all the leaf values, you are going to get n. Okay. Assume that there are k 1s and k 2s. What will be n? N will be 3k. Right? Because there are k 1s and k 2s. If there are k 1s and k 2s, what is the leaf level complexity? K 1s will give you k into 0, plus k 2s will give you k into 1, that is equal to k comparisons for leaf nodes. If there are 2k nodes at the leaf, how many internal nodes will be there? 2k minus 1 internal nodes. Each internal node is going to contribute 2 comparisons. Therefore, 2k into minus 1 is 4k minus 2. Together, if you add, you have the total number of comparison is 5k minus 2. But what is k? Now you put k in terms of n. K is nothing but n by 3 here. Therefore, this is equal to 5 n by 3 minus 2. And this is the worst case. So every other case is going to have smaller than or equal to, and that is what I have written here. Okay. So I have convinced you, I have not solved mathematically those recurrence equation. That requires the techniques from combinatorics and then generating function techniques and shift add and the power of 2s and odd even case. The mathematics is about 2.5 pages. Don't worry about it, but I have proved that it is going to be less than or equal to 5k by just appealing to your intuition and looking at the recursion tree, because that is how the computation is done. So let us go